So I think there will be a presentation PowerPoint up there in just a second, but I'm glad you're all here today. I want to talk to you about VR Esports. So that basically is competitive gaming in an immersive virtual environment. And I want to tell you quickly how I became involved in that. Basically, about 2.5 years ago, my oldest son was being deployed. He is in the Army, or was in the Army, and he was being deployed to Afghanistan. And so he wanted to go to a Best Buy. I was really not into technology at all. And so Best Buy was not my favorite place, but I went because I love him. And he and my husband begged me to try this thing called virtual reality. And again, I was not very much thrilled. But everybody has these moments when you do VR. You have your story. I put on the headset, and I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And so I thought it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And so at that point, basically, I had been a stay-at-home mom. I'm also a journalist by trade. I'm a writer. I've written 8 books. And I do a lot of nonprofit work, so I've done a lot of PR work and marketing, and I thought, you know, it would be really neat to just get involved in this industry. And so I started playing VR because I also have some health problems and I have to sit a lot. And so when I began playing, I noticed that my pain levels were decreasing. So I started playing a lot, and when I say a lot, I probably should tell you like 10 hours a day, which I know is excessive for most people, but when you have an option to take pain medicine or play in a virtual environment, the virtual environment is much healthier and it's better for you emotionally. So I became a really good player in this game called Echo Arena by a company called Ready at Dawn, and they actually decided to start a league, and so I was actually in the first season as a competitor. And so I have some information up there about just my bioinformation, but I wanted to move on and talk to you about what's been going on in the whole industry since then. So that's what you're here to hear. And so the leagues started in 2017. We had the first league that started was a league called VR Master League, and that's actually a community-driven league. And the players just enjoyed being together so much and wanted to start having some competition. Because, you know, when you have a game that you can compete in, it's just our human nature to want to see if you're better than your neighbor. And so this particular game, Onward, they wanted to come together and compete. They're 5-on-5 teams. And so they started this league called VR Master League. And that started in early 2017. It's still a community-driven platform. They have sponsorship from VR Cover and Pro2 VR, so they do have some sponsors, but mostly everything is done by community members, which is great. And so that's going to be important later because I'm going to talk to you some more about community. But basically, that league has continued to grow, and they have a lot of members now, a lot of teams, and they've actually, this season, they have 5 different games in that league. And so it's real exciting to see the growth. That's just one example of how VR Esports is growing. And then there's also a league called the Collegiate VR Esports League. And I'm also going to touch on this again in just a second for the future of VR Esports. But I wanted to mention to you that we have leagues across the board. There are leagues for first-person shooters, for things like paintball. That's a rec room game. They have a community-driven league for that. And when you see leagues, you start seeing things happen in terms of growth in the industry, because all of a sudden you start bringing in sponsorships and jerseys and equipment like mats and touch controller skins, things like that. So it's real important to understand that the reason I'm showing you the leagues is because leagues mean growth in the industry, which is a good thing. And so the Collegiate League, basically what I do as a journalist, I find these people that are doing things like this or interested in starting something like this, and then I help them to promote it or market it and help, provide advice and things so they can make it grow in the healthiest way possible, or to even establish it in the first place, because sometimes people don't really know how to start leagues. And so when the Collegiate League wanted to start a couple of years ago, I would kind of point them in the right direction with people. And they had five 5 schools involved in that. The second season, they had 6 schools. They're getting ready to start season 3, and they will have 15 teams for season 3, which is great. You can see that's an exponential growth there. It's really pretty amazing. And that league is for college students, obviously. Another league I want to mention was the Virtual Athletics League. So the Virtual Athletics League is for arcades. And so this would be like location-based entertainment centers or arcades that want to participate in tournaments. And some of those might be, for example, at the arcades, you have like Space Pirate Trainer, or a lot of people don't realize you don't have to have a competitive game like a first-person shooter or multiplayer to have competitive VR esports. You can have something like Beat Saber, and I'm sure all of you have heard of Beat Saber. You know, I don't see how anybody can not like Beat Saber. It's just fun. But you can play Beat Saber, and you can do it for the health benefits or the enjoyment or whatever. But of course, we always have those people that just have to get the better score than someone else. And so we also have Beat Saber tournaments, of course. And so Virtual Athletics League, I helped them promote a tournament a couple years ago, which ended up being the, I guess this was last summer. Time gets away from you. But it was the largest virtual reality arcade event that had, of course, we haven't had many to date, but it was a huge event. There were like 160 arcades participating. That's 160 arcades around the world. So if you have 160 arcades, you can imagine how many people at each arcade. That was a lot of people participating in this tournament at the same time. So that was really exciting to see. And I think tomorrow, Mr. Beck will be here talking about Beat Saber, so I look forward to hearing his talk. Another league is the VR League. Now, this was initially called the VR Challenger League, and I actually have a shirt on for this. This is my community shirt. I do not work for Oculus. I don't represent them. I don't work for the league in any way. I just really happen to like this shirt because it's very comfortable. And it's my community shirt, which I like showing off because community is very important. So the VR League started in 2017, and that's when I was a competitor in season 1. And we had 2 games. There were about half the number of competitors that there were this past season. And so the prize pool was less. Every season it has grown. We've seen growth in that and growth in the number of players. And so, again, that just shows that you have a lot of interest there. Right now, we're actually working toward seeing how all this ties together in terms of community, because all these leagues involve community in some way, whether it's the arcade community or the collegiate students or the community members in the VR League. Community plays a very important part in VR esports. And actually, anything you do that involves VR gaming involves a lot of community. So it's not quite so much with maybe industry. With healthcare and education in VR, with things that you do, you have to find the people that need those services and what you provide, and you have right there a built-in consumer base. But for gaming and esports, you have communities that build up, just like with regular sports teams, and people have the ones that they really like and support and stuff. It's the same thing with VR esports. I always tell people, VR esports is much more like traditional sports than it is like computer gaming, because there's a lot more physicality. You move around a lot. You have the games that you play that you become committed to. Of course, that's like regular gaming. But you have the communities. They develop these relationships inside VR in the communities that they participate in, whatever game that is. And then they also develop relationships outside of VR. So I wanted to tell you some of the things for community that we have, and this is important for growth, but you have community days, boot camps, training sessions. We have rookie leagues. So we have all these larger leagues that maybe have sponsors or prize pools and things like that, but you also have community-driven leagues that they just get together to play because they like to play. And so some of these people are looking for sponsorships or information on ways to grow. Some of them aren't. It just depends. But the point is that they get to come together for the love of that particular game and play the game in a competitive setting. And that's great because it shows commitment to the game. And when somebody's invested in something, then they're much more likely to stay in that environment. There's so many stories I could tell you, but basically you have situations where some people, and you know this, like humans like connection with other people. And so when you make a friend and you go to a place and see that friend again, you're more likely to go back to that place. You remember that old show Cheers, go where everybody knows your name? And so it's kind of like that in VR. It's not like flat gaming or traditional gaming where you see that on the screen. In VR, you guys know we're in there. You're immersed in the environment. And so that's the key with VR esports and bringing in community and making sure that we always emphasize that. If we want that, if we want it to continue to grow, which the industry is and it will, then we really have to make sure that we always draw in the user or the player, in this case, the players of the game. So what's up for the future? Basically, there are a lot of things going on that I could tell you about. There's so much happening right now. I mean, if you want to know if it's a good thing to invest in, or if you're just interested in becoming involved in VR esports, or if you make a product that can be used, for right now, we have leagues coming in, there are new players coming in, there are new games being developed constantly. One thing that I try to encourage developers to do is to develop games that aren't all first-person shooters because, for example, one of the areas we're trying to grow that's growing very rapidly because of the Oculus Quest is the collegiate and high school area. They're very interested in it, and they're able to put those in the schools a little easier than with, say, the Vive or the Rift because they don't need a PC with the Quest. And so it makes it a little bit more affordable for them per student. And the only issue is that a lot of games, competitive games that are available, are actually first-person shooters. And, of course, the schools can't do that with STEM requirements. And in other countries, too, there are issues with that. A lot of them just don't want the guns. And so I encourage developers always to make sure that they're developing games that take that into consideration because there's so many other ways out there to have competition, as you guys know, and some of the other things we've heard. I was thinking the lady earlier when she was talking about the way they compete when they do their hospitality training. You can have competition in pretty much any setting, and you can make a fun game out of that. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a league or anything, but you can make a game that doesn't involve a gun. And so that's really fun that we're seeing more of that. We're seeing a lot of interest from those age groups. We're also, the last presenter, talking about the elderly, the elder care. That's really interesting because you can also have leagues that maybe those people, I talk to them all the time, and they are very interested in playing esports, which is interesting to some people. They think they wouldn't want to, but they do. And so basically, there's a lot going on. We have products and services and arenas popping up. There's some interest in VR esports arenas in addition to the regular esports arenas. So if you want to talk to me about any of that, then feel free to message me or just catch me after. I'd be glad to talk with you at any point in time. And I really love VR esports. I'm very tired at the moment. I've been traveling for 2 days and I'm a little bit exhausted, but I'm very passionate about this subject and would love to chat with you more. So if you have any questions at all, just let me know and I'll be here to talk with you. Thank you very much.